Hello. Let everyone in. Welcome, early birds. Some familiar names. Welcome. Oh no, Alina Turner. We know her. Hi, Prakash. Hey, Elise. Okay, we'll just give everyone 1 minute and then we have loads and loads of content. So we're going to jump in.
Hi, everyone. Before we get started, also, if you have any questions, you can just kind of start dropping them into the discussion there. Also, we usually get the first question is will this be recorded? Will this be sent out? Will we get a copy of the presentation? And yes, yes, yes. Hopefully by the end of day, we should have that out. If not, for sure, first thing in the morning when you wake up, it'll be in your inboxes. I'll pass it back to Jesse.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to get started and people can stream in. Get the. Alrighty, share screen. See if I can do this. How does it look for everyone? I have a movie theater screen, so can you see it? My team? Yeah? Okay, cool.
You're good.
Let's kick it off. Or let's try. So welcome. If you're here, you are in the Designing Data Collection That Works, a practical guide for nonprofits. Today, we're going to talk about data frameworks needed to answer some kind of core insights. So I didn't lie to you in the description. But before we do that, I do want to take us down a bit of a journey on some of the newish technological advancements that have happened in the last year that massively change how we might go about answering some of those questions. So I'm Jessie Donaldson, Executive Vice President of Strategic Services. I'm actually coming to you in this data presentation as a social policy person first, a data person second. And I say that because we have technical people in the room, we have non-data people in the room, we have nonprofit leaders. I think we have representation from all levels of government. And at Help Seeker, we have an expectation of all our staff. You can be data first, you can be social first, but you've got to have both. So today, and when I was designing the presentation, I thought, how do I speak to both? And hopefully by the end, you'll all still be here. Because I think increasingly, as the pace of technology changes, we all need to be able to be both to move move the needle on social outcomes. And so let's kind of talk about what the shape of the next hour will be. Huh. This is not what I thought the slide would say. Okay, so these are the three questions we're going to answer. We're going to answer who are we serving, what's happening in our program, and what results are emerging for whom. But how we're going to get there is as follows. I'm going to talk about kind of the issues we have with our current data collection and how we've conceived it. And I don't think those should be new to you. Next, I'm going to talk about the most academic part of this conversation about ontological concepts and how we define things and how that impacts our ability to answer the three questions you're looking at on the screen. Third, I'm going to talk about new innovations in databases that allow us to represent more complex social data in a way that I think is going to honor the people that we're serving. And then the fourth, and this is what I want you to stay for, I'm actually going to show you a fake organization, Centerville. They're a youth organization. And what I'm going to do is show you how we would answer these questions using fake data from that organization. I'm going to demo not only a graph database, which is very cool, a working graph database, but I'm also going to demo an AI interface that we stood up just yesterday, actually, to allow you to query data plain language. And so these principles, I hope, are things you'll be able to take back to your respective organizations. And I think if I show you kind of the tools that are available, you'll be able to do so. Okay, so before we go to data, Again, it's social policy, so I am person-centered at heart. My background's housing and homelessness. I want you to start somewhere else. Close your eyes, and I want you to bring one person to mind, someone that your organization has supported, or if you're in different levels of government, that you see walking to work who may be experiencing homelessness, etc. So take that person in your mind. Just for a second, picture their face. And I want you to picture something specific that you know about that person. It could be a detail from a conversation, could be a decision point, it could be something that you help them navigate that never went into a form. That if you look today in the data you have available for that person, you couldn't see. And I want you to hold that person in your head for the next really half hour as we walk through one of the issues we have with our current data collection philosophy. While you think about that person, think about behind every row in your system. And if your system is just a series of Excel sheets, it still applies. Every row in your system is an actual moment in that person's journey, the same kind of moment that you would have just brought to mind. And what our collective challenge is, beyond just answering who are we serving, how are we doing, is how are we representing those moments and times of people and their journeys so we can actually see whether we're making an impact at scale. So the tension is, you all collect data. We collect data. Everyone in this room collects data. You have it in case notes, spreadsheets, CRM, emails. I've seen some of those, deleted some of those. And if you're anything like me, half the data is also in your head. So today, if we're going to answer who are we serving, what's happening in our programs, and what results are emerging and for who, the starting point, I believe, and Help Seeker believes, has to be with the people whose information is moving through that system. And that's why I asked you to think about someone real, because everything we're building today and what we go towards in the demo will be needs to reflect their actual journey, not the structures and the organizations and the programs and these entities and bureaucracy that we create around people. And once you hold that person in your head, I think you'll start to see through these different technological tools something important and deeply flawed about how we document people's stories. Okay, so go back to your person. Imagine everything in that person's life, the changes, the movement between programs, the issues come up, the support that they receive. And now, and this shouldn't be hard for some of you because you do it every day, imagine trying to represent that in a form with 48 fields and a drop-down menu because your data framework requires it. So there's a clear gap between how people experience support and how our systems record it. And I suspect I'm preaching to the converted in a sense, but it's important context to get where we need to go. That gap is how information gets flattened and where the context of people's experiences and outcomes disappears. And then the story of those people becomes extremely hard to follow. But that gap is also the reason we struggle to pull out answers we need, the answers that tell us, tell our boss, tell funders whether we're doing a good job. And by good job, I mean, are we making a measurable social impact for an effective use of resources? So part of the challenge is what we collect. You can't derive answers from information that you're not collecting. So there's a whole process and body of work on, are we collecting the right thing? And we're going to talk a bit about that. But part of it also comes from how the information is organized in the system. And I dare to say that there are probably organizations in this room now, you have what you need. You probably don't need to collect more. It's how it's organized in the back end or your database or the tools you have to query it that need support. And I'm hoping through this conversation, you may be able to see in your organization which place, that kind of front end or the back end, you need to focus on in the next step of your data insight journey. Okay, people are complex. It's a no shit Sherlock statement. But they move, they change, they circle back, they progress, they face setbacks. And really importantly, in your organizations or whether your government, clients interact with different part of your organization at different times for different reasons. And that's one of the most challenging things it seems to be for us to kind of tell a story of across programs, across organizations, across government ministries, across cities. How do we follow that person? So the data frameworks we have try to represent lives using structures that were meant for accounting. And I think we use Excel and Google Sheets so commonly, but actually that's not really what they were intended for. How do we fit a complex human experience in a spreadsheet of rows and columns? So, intake spreadsheets, assessment spreadsheets, program attendance logs, referral logs, goal tracking tools, all of those are fine. We need those. But the problem is all of those things create 6 different versions of the same person within a single organization. That's best case. But we actually have 300 different versions of the same person across organizations, government ministries, etc. So none of those versions talk to each other. And that's not unique to nonprofits. So I'm not bothering you guys about that. It is a systemic approach on how we consider the representation of social data. So the same pattern repeats at every level of government: municipal, provincial, federal. Health system has one. That's in its own box. Justice has another. That's in its own box. Housing, we know housing is its own ballgame. It's got 3 or 4 other systems. Education has another. So each ministry, in part, also your funders, each ministry builds around its own mandate instead of the whole person. And that journey and the moments that make up that person's social well-being, so those incremental moments, like the ones you thought of at the beginning, get lost. So we've had decades of conversations. Again, housing homelessness. So like I've been raised on HIFIS, etc. Decades of conversations about data linkages, interoperability, can't say that word, digital transformation, digital identity. But most of the systems we have today, and if I'm wrong, you tell me, can't follow a person properly across the services they rely on. So what do we get? We get billions of dollars of data infrastructure, billions of dollars of data infrastructure transformation, billions of dollars of social spending that haven't done justice to what it is that people actually need and want. And we still have a fuzzy picture of the human journey. So we're in these verticals creating all these data transformation efforts, but if it's not following the person or the journey, really, what's the point? So my hypothesis is that the issue isn't that the data is missing. For some of you, maybe it is. If it's all in case notes or it's all stuck somewhere, sure, there's data missing. But it's also that our structure hasn't supported the kinds of connections that that journey requires. Fortunately, we actually do have some of the tools we need that can handle the complexity of actual humans going through the pathway that weren't practical before. And Help Seeker in our journey, I mean, we've been doing this with Alina Turner and Travis. They've been doing it for 2 decades. Help Seeker as a company has really been doing it for 5 years. And this has been our entire journey. I would say in the last 6 months, that journey looks way different than it has the past 5 years. And that journey for us of representing complex social systems is going to look way different in the next month than it ever has. So all of us, yourself included, are in this pace of technological change. I think it kind of behooves us to get on that train so that we're able to figure out how we might use that to improve social outcomes. The tools are so accessible that I, coming from social policy first, data second, was able to build a complete data framework, a graph database, and an AI chatbot that queries it for you guys in the last 2 days. I'm not a technical expert, and I'm sure my tech team would look at it and go, here's the problem. But the point is that these are tools available at your fingertips and your team's fingertips. So how might we start to make use of them in projects that aren't $1 million transformation data projects that don't go anywhere? So I promised you data frameworks today, but I want to look at them through the lens of what these new technologies are that make, not new technologies, technological advancements that make them possible, because the structure of the data framework only matters if you can actually use it. Okay, so we're going to go back to the people after some water. If we agree that a person's journey is a series of connected moments, ones you can see and ones you can't, then we need to unpack, why do we lose those connections? Why do they disappear in the data? Most organizations, yourselves included, capture the moments. So you have intakes, you have assessments, you have services, you have a goal identified, you have exits, you have conversations. But what's missing in those moments is how they relate to each other. And that what's missing is called the relational layer in your data. And that's what breaks the story of the person. And I'm going to use relational layer a few times in this combo. So think about your own work. Oh, I forgot that I had to click things. Okay, so an intake, think about, we're going to do the relationships. So an intake links to a person links to a program. An assessment links back to that same person and it links to a case. A goal is created through a case because of what the assessment reveals. And services delivered relate to these goals in theory, hopefully. Outcomes depend on the sequence of the support a person receives relative to that assessment, goals, and services. So the work is connected. What happens in all of our databases is that the data usually isn't. So there's huge amount of time invested in the back end when we want to ask simple questions like, how is Joe doing towards his goals? It takes a lot of effort to link those because of the databases that we have available to us. So if we agree, moments, people are a series of moments. Moments build a journey, and we need to have a relational layer for those moments and journey. To rebuild the relationships that hold a person's journey together, we need to be clear on what the journey is made of. So every organization, no matter the sector, doesn't matter if you're government or nonprofit, actually works with the same building blocks, but you call them something different. So people, person is a person is a person. Person may be a client, person may be a case manager, person may be senior leadership, person may be a family member. A person is a concept that holds true across all of the work we do, and that's important. The cases or files you have connected to people, the services you deliver, the activities that happen, the goals that people set, the changes you observe, and the insights you learn from those changes. And you might say, well, actually, we do something different. Absolutely. But at its core, I bet you can find those same concepts, people, case, service, activities, goals, changes, insights within everything you do, or you would at the very least want to be able to define that. Each program, each organization, each funding stream ends up defining these building blocks differently. And there's more than what I've listed today, there's hundreds. But because we don't have common definitions or common conceptions of what those building blocks are, that is one of the reasons we end up with fragmented stories. Because if you have an interaction with Jordan in one program and Jordan goes to another program, his service activities and goals, if those are not clearly identified or named within each, get lost when you try to follow the person. So if we rebuild the relationships in our data, because that's how we're going to see the journey, we need to be clear about the core pieces that we're working with. So what this is called is an ontology. This is as academic as we're going to get today, not an academic person, but it is really important. And it is the single biggest missing element in social service data collection, including your own. And I know because it's also at times been missing in ours. An ontology is simply a structured way of describing your work, but not just with definitions. It's got categories, attributes, relationships that stay consistent across your organization. In theory, an ontology could and should stay consistent across the human experience of social services, because what we're saying is these are predefined universal truths. A person is always a person. So it doesn't matter if a person is in Blue Door, emergency shelter, or in supportive housing, or getting income assistance from government. A person is always a person. If you're like, what are you talking about? I'm going to show you what this actually looks like with real data. But for a minute, just humor me. My team hates my analogies, but I can only think in analogies, so we'll try. So think about an ontology like a blueprint behind a house. The walls are major categories. So people, programs, services, goals, outcomes. The rooms are the specific types inside those categories. So programs type, service types, goal types, outcome types. Each organization is going to have different things in the rooms. The doors and the hallways are the relationships, so how each piece connects together, how each of those rooms connects together. And the labels are the attributes, so dates, statuses, values, demographic details. What that adds up to is the whole floor plan is a logic or the structure that shows everything, how everything fits together. If you're a data person in the room, in some sense, it's not dissimilar from a data dictionary, where this field means this field means this. However, it goes up a level because it's describing, again, universal truths within the representation of our human system, our social interactions, that allows you to apply it to a broad set of scenarios. So when everyone's using the same blueprint, you can walk through the house without getting lost, or you can walk through your data without getting lost. For you, in most of your work and in this conversation, you know what a goal is, you know what a service is, you know what an activity is, and you know what outcome means. And all of it connects back to the same person. So that will allow insight to move across programs, teams, and systems. With me so far? Okay. So we're going to give you an example. This is kind of a crazy slide, but alas. Okay, so we have Jordan. Jordan's back. Across the organization, different teams record Jordan's experience differently. Multiple programs. So one program calls Jordan's, the work they're doing with Jordan a goal. Another calls it a service plan. Another calls it a target. Another calls it a care plan. You're all describing the same thing, but because those labels differ, the system or people trying to get information out of that system has no way of knowing that. And that's one of the difficulties of not having that shared language. Once that breaks, everything else downstream is going to break. So the issue we have with our data collection is happening at the very outset due to a lack of shared language or conception. So here's the opposite. Jordan's looking much happier. AI Jordan. Everyone's using the same structure, same building blocks. So Jordan's connected to a case. Jordan receives services. Jordan has many touch points over time in different programs, different types of touch points. Jordan sets goals. Jordan reaches outcomes. And Jordan's outcomes then help generate what actually worked. You then feed those back into your organization for continuous learning. So now the story you can see holds together just by having those set building blocks. It's the difference between we served 166 youth this year, and here's Jordan's pathway. Here's what happened. Here's what changed. Here's what it tells us. Jordan's case managers can tell you that at a drop of a hat, but we need flexible data systems to be able to do that at scale so we can start to run some of those more important queries. Nothing's more important than Jordan's journey, but more sophisticated queries like what are all of the Jordan's journeys and what are the interventions that were most successful and most effective towards their positive social outcome. If you're thinking I'm asking every organization to collect the same data, I'm not. So the ontology gives us shared categories. It doesn't tell you what you need to put in your house. The details of those categories can be as specific as your work requires. In fact, if you have an ontologically aligned data framework across your whole organization, each program is going to have very different things they collect. But if everything is defined, all the entities as one, then you start to be able to build some consistency. So we've got the building blocks, we've got relationships. If we have that, which we do, some of us, the new technological advancements are I'm going to show you, help you see the story that's been there the whole time. And that's where we're going to go next before we do demo. So up until this, we focused on building blocks, but I dare to say some of you have done this work. So there are really two pieces that we need to think about. One is the front end, what you collect, how you collect it. And then the back end is the structure that stores it. And too often, and ourselves, we've fallen down that trap previously as well. We focus so much on the front end. It's really important that that's ontologically aligned and it's optimized for case managers to use. But instead, we've left the back end, the database, and where all that information goes to kind of suffer without attention. So the front end is everything you touch. That's going to be the forms, the workflows, the choices about what information goes where. That's really important. You want that ontologically aligned, consistent, and logical, connected to the insights you want. But the second part, the back end, like I said, is just as important. And that decides how you store it in the back end, whether the relationships and the journeys and the moments you collect stay intact or they fall apart. And I'll show you what I mean for the non-data people. Okay, so you can give programs consistent labels. Moretto sits here. We've done a huge amount of work into this layer, our case management, making sure that what we collect is ontologically aligned to a mega social system ontology that we've created so staff don't have to guess. And we're going to share more information after the webinar, but that's great. The front end design has a natural limit. There's no amount of ontological alignment you can do within your case management software or ours that is going to perfectly maintain those relationships in the back end and those journeys without some additional innovation. Okay, so there's two types of databases we're going to talk about, but for the non-data people and for the data people, I hope I'm not butchering this. The non-data people, in traditional relational systems, people, services, goals all end up in separate tables. Like I said, we use Excel sheets and Google sheets that were meant for accounting to represent complex human journeys. Analysts, data analysts, can link them, and many of you do that all week. But as you know, it's fragile. It requires matching different IDs. It requires that definitions stay aligned. If you want to add in new concepts, you have to continuously match those IDs. So it can turn into a very complicated and clunky system, and it can take a lot of time to just extract a single question, or most importantly, follow a person. So when, for the senior leaders in the room, when you ask a simple question and you say, well, how many youth we served? It's not because your team doesn't know what they're doing. It's not because you don't have the data. Often it's because the structure of how it's stored and the challenge of making that data relational and speak to each other. So again, there's often not a lot wrong with the data itself, well, sometimes. So that's why questions like how many people did we serve? How many people moved between programs get increasingly difficult to answer, particularly the more complex your organization and programs get. So there's two types of databases. There's but two for this conversation. The one is relational, and that's the SQL systems most organizations use. So they store it in tables, each table holding one type of thing. So you can have a table for rent supplement clients and another for program attendance. But what if I want to see the correlation between housing stability for clients receiving rent supplements and program attendance? I have to make those linkages, which creates transactional work. All of us use relational data. So if you're a municipality, shelters, outreach, housing placements, those are all in 4 or 5 different systems. If you're a nonprofit leader, when you're trying to pull a board report, you're pulling finance from one area, programs for another, grant from another. All of that is usually in tables that may or may not be relational. That does work for a lot of tasks, don't get me wrong, but they require you to store and link those those relationships. The second, and only a couple more slides for the demo so you can actually see what I mean, because I didn't have my aha until I saw it, is a graph database. And a graph database is specifically built for relational data, relationships between concepts. Oh, there we go. Cool. So what you're actually looking at here is a graph database, is a visual representation of, and I'm going to explain what this crazy thing means. So if we go from spreadsheet, columns and rows, very rigid, and we think about this, already as a visual person, I can see that this may be a more effective tool to represent the complexity of social systems and human experience. This is not the most technical definition. You can look it up. I'll send you some stuff. But a graph database stores information in the same way that your work takes place. So instead of spreading people, cases, service, interaction, goals into different tables, what it does is can keep them connected from a start. The entire thing is about relational layered data. Each piece of data you put in becomes a node, And then those connections are stored directly in the relationship. So just let's look at this together, and we're going to look at a real one in a minute. So imagine that these circles here are people. Imagine that these blue circles here are cases. Imagine that, or programs. Let's make them programs. Imagine that these here are cases. All of these circles are entities that store information about that person, that program, and all of the lines in between these represent relationships. So we say a person is connected, is enrolled in a program. A person has a case. A case is enrolled in a program. A staff member manages case. A staff member supports person. The number of relationships you can build, even with 5 entities, is frankly infinite. The more relationships we're able to build in our data, the more we're able to query it. So you can see if I needed to follow, let's make this Jordan, through a journey in my social system and through a whole social system, my ability to store interactions, moments, cases, events, outcome becomes much more sophisticated because our lives really operate as a network instead of spreadsheets. So this gives you a way to store the ontology. That's why the ontology is so important, because this gets crazy. If you don't have a consistent way to conceive the definition of these nodes of person versus case versus event, you can see how it's difficult to build relationships between those entities. Okay, a quick 101 on graph databases. They're not new. I keep saying new, and I'm sure someone more technical will laugh me out of the room. But what is new is the pace of change. So we actually have been working on an ontology and also graph modeling for years, including in partnership with University of Toronto through Canada's digital supercluster. And frankly, in some ways, we've made more progress in the last 6 months than we did over years. And that's because this is moving at such a rapid pace. It also means that the technology is caught up to, in some sense, the complexity of our social systems. So really quickly, why we're in a different place than we were before. I mean, the collective we, yourselves included. Graph is now fast enough to handle large networks of people. So you saw all those different relationships. It's really easy to get a huge graph very quickly. So it's fast enough to handle large networks of people, cases, service without slowing down. The technology is scalable enough for municipalities, provincial ministries, and large nonprofits. And I think more than scalable, it's also accessible. So again, I'm data second, and I'm able to use some of these tools, and you can too. We're in fact building a graph database for a provincial government right now to look at some of that cross-ministry work. So already there's some practical applications. It's not just kind of a theoretical thing anymore. And then also standardized enough to be stable part of enterprise data structure. So the tools that are available are ability to use graph in a secure way, in a responsible way within infrastructure, enterprise infrastructure has improved. But the single biggest thing is AI. And we all talk about how we use AI, ChatGPT, but that is the thing, the newest kind of development that's going to make all of this technical stuff usable for the people that need it. So I'm just going to bring this together quickly on the 3 parts before I talk about the AI. So before I give you a data framework, and my God, I promise you I will, is what matters in answering these insight questions as nonprofits or any place in the social system is what we collect, the forms and the workflows and the fields we decide, the ontology, the shared meaning behind those fields, so the data comes in consistently and scalable across programs, organizations, entire social systems, the graph database, where information is stored and those relationships are preserved. But you might ask, how the hell does this help me? How does it become so usable to someone like me? Because I can't show my boss, my funder, my board, government, a graph database. So we're all using ChatGPT, and I'm sure you've discovered by now, AI has huge limitations when it comes to doing real data analysis. One, there's a security issue. That's for another day. We're not putting personal level data, I hope, in GPT. But two, AI isn't actually that good at data analysis, and it's not easy within a chat interface to know when it's hallucinating, whether it's pulling the right things. However, if you pair AI with something like a graph database, clean, coherent, structured database, where we've predefined in our schema all of the relationships, then it can actually reliably analyze data in a secure way. So because the graph databases store information in a connected structure, people's cases programs, I'm going to bore you by saying that, the AI doesn't have to infer anything. So the roads are already drawn for it. So all you need to do is to support the AI with what types of relationships you want to look at for which questions, and then it can reliably traverse the graph. That's what it's called. I think of like driving across a network, but alas, it can traverse the graph. So you can ask it stuff like, instead of a technical coding query, you can just say, how many people moved between programs last month? What usually happens before a crisis? Who might need follow-up? Who haven't we spoke to? What's the relationship between overdoses in my program and organization and overdoses within the rest of the community? What's the relationship between poverty rates and the types of issues I'm seeing in my organization? It truly is limitless what we can do through the use of those four things. Okay. Now I'm going to show you. Game changer, four things: organized data collection, shared understanding, database, and an interface that lets anyone in the organization access it in plain language. Okay. So Centerville, I'm going to show you the demo. Centerville operates 10 programs across the full spectrum of youth. They're about a $5 million organization. They offer emergency shelter, transitional, mental health, substance use, outreach, run-of-the-mill, excellent integrated youth serving organization. They work with about 100 people. We developed synthetic data for about 100 people, aged 13 to 24. They have 238 active cases, and each person participates in about 2 programs. So the purpose of this is to show you it's an organization with some complexity. There's 4 groups of information that Centerville's data falls into: people and context, programs and activity, outcomes and change, and insights and learning. I built a relatively simple framework to answer the 3 questions that we sort of proposed at the outset. Most of you will have versions of this. So this is really the starter package, I think, for any person serving organization and the types of things you would collect. When I translate that to a graph context, I have to do something slightly different. So I have to identify my entities or my nodes. Those were the circles in the graph. I have to identify person, case, intake, assessment. I also need to define person type, person role, service type. So those are my taxonomies when you see type. Below, you can also see that I need to define the relationships. So those are the lines in between the nodes. So a person has a case has a goal has an outcome. A case is managed by a case manager. So because I've preloaded those in, you're going to see how the information works differently together. Okay, so let's look at it now. Can you see my screen, everybody? Give me an emoji. Yeah, okay. Cool. So for the demo, we're using Neo4j. It's one of the more recently accessible tools in regards to creating graph databases. Our tech team uses a more advanced version. However, this one was perfect for me to create this demo for you. So what you're looking at on the left is I created a whole bunch of synthetic data using Claude, actually. So using an LLM. Creating a synthetic data with your own data schema and putting it in here is a really great way you can experiment with how your data might translate into something like a graph. So you can see we have our nodes. These look familiar. This is what I just showed you. And then we also have our relationships here. And then our property keys. On the right-hand side, what you're looking at is a place where you can put in cipher queries. And all cipher queries is the language that Neo4j uses to ask questions in a technical way of the database. I'm going to show you just two for the data people, but then I'm going to show you a more kind of user-friendly way to traverse the graph as well. So I'm going to ask, show me all programs and how many youth are enrolled. So I'm going to paste in my cipher query, program, case, enrolled in. So it's identifying two entities and it's identifying the relationships. I click run. Okay, so I can see all of my programs within my organization. And I can also see the type of program they are and what my active enrollment is. You can download this as CSV, a JSON. You can also create pipelines. So this goes all sorts of places. But for the sake of this, you can see how the language can be used to query. What I'm also going to do is show me all clients and their case managers. Oh, that's actually the question. I'll do the query. Run. Great. So client, here are all my clients. Here's all my case managers. Here's the case number of what they're responsible for. I don't know cipher language. What I did to create this was I asked my smart tech team, and I also used Claude and ChatGPT to, in plain language, put what my query was. So it then created my cipher queries for me. So again, trying to show you that this really can be more accessible to you. But let's explore it as an actual graph. So we're going to start with the organization. I said person is king, but let's see if we can get from looking at the organization all the way down to a person. I'm going to click here. Play. Okay, so here we go. We have Centerville Youth Network. What we're going to do is we're going to click on it. And when you click expand, this is going to show me all of the relationships that I've set for Centerville Youth Network. When I click operates, it's showing me all my programs. So I've set a relationship that an organization operates a program. An organization is an entity and a program is an entity. I can double click on these and I can see I've loaded in my description. So I've linked description as an attribute of program. There's way more I could put in here, but that's for a different day. So let's try to dig into pathways. What is this? Supportive housing program offering up 18-month scattered site services. So what if I want to see what services are connected to my program? I'm going to click expand, delivers. So here I can see that Pathways has housing navigation, case management, and life skills training. I've set a relationship, and you can set your own, that a program delivers a service. Well, let's pull out housing navigation. Now I want to see all of the support plans in my organization that are offering housing navigation. Okay, so now I have all these different support plans. It could actually be better ontologically aligned, but for the demo and the purpose of this, I can pull up all of the support plans related to housing navigation. Now we're going to go to Casey. So here's my support plan for Casey. And I want to look at the case that's connected. So a support plan, there could be multiple, but each support plan can have multiple cases connected to it in my demo ontology. So I'm going to click part of case. Oh, where did it go? Yeah, so support plan for Casey is part of this case here. And now I'm going to see has case. Wilson, I found Casey. So Casey Wilson has a case and a support plan that's connected to housing navigation, specifically in the Pathways program. What if I also want to see Casey's goals? So Casey as a person or has a case, and each case has goals. Okay, so and these are labeled by IDs. If done properly, you would actually see the name of the goal, but I can see that Casey has a substance use recovery goal, excuse me, education goal, housing stability goal. If I wanted to dig in to one of these, we'll just wait. Let's look at the case first and say, what are the outcomes attached to the case? Okay, so I can see that Casey has 3 outcomes, a clinical outcome in the pathways, an economic outcome, and again, you can be way more specific, this is just demo, or an employment one. If I now want to see where Casey is trying to achieve that goal. Set in, boom. Casey's trying to achieve that goal as part of that case within the pathway to transition. If I also want to see who's managing the case, Yuki writes her case manager. So you can see, and again, this is not meant to be a user interface where you find information. This is not the point, but the point is to show you the structure of the graph and how it works. And already you can see my ability to go from Centerville Youth Network fairly simply down to Casey was elevated versus a series of tables. We're going to just do one more thing before I show you the AI piece. So we're going to dismiss all other nodes. There really is infinite queries you can run just in the very simple one that I've set up. So pathways to transition, this is my program. What if I want to see absolutely everything? Boom. So now when I zoom in, and this like excites me, I can see all of the programs, referrals, people, goals, intakes, exits, cases, staff that are related to this program. This isn't useful in someone trying to find information, but I'm trying to impress upon you that what it is useful to do is it stores that in a coherent way with all of the rules about the relationships so we can build dashboards, AI, pipelines on top of it that traverses this in a sensible way. And again, this is a really simple one. You can make these as complex as you need to answer the queries you need. Okay, I'm going to go now to the AI part. Okay, so hopefully this works while I'm sharing my screen. What you're looking at, let's get rid of this. This is not a help seeker product. This is a free front end that I spun up just to show you the connection between the queries that we just saw and the plain language. What this does is it uses the connection to our database, the graph I just showed you through Neo4j, and it uses an LLM. It specifically uses a ChatGPT LLM in a secure environment. It makes API calls to ask questions of the data in a structured way. So we're going to try it ourselves. So let's see who is enrolled. No different than what I just showed you, but your executive director can use it. Mental health services. Let's see. So it takes a couple of minutes. One, because it's just a free front end with not a lot of computing. But two, what it's going to do is traverse the whole graph in theory. Maybe. Let me stop sharing my screen for 1 minute. Stop share. It doesn't like the computing power. Okay. Let's try without it, and then I'll bring it back up. One more time. Let's give it one more sec. I lied to you. It's not working right now. All right, let me just try one thing. Okay, well, not working. What? Oh, no, it did work. Okay, I lied to you. My apologies. So now it's working. So what it's doing is it's calling the database. And again, this is a free front end, which is why you're seeing some lag. And then it's calling the OpenAI tool. So what I asked was show me the full journey for Alex Cox. What it's able to pull, and it takes a minute to transverse, is the following. Alex Cox is a youth client who's been actively engaged in multiple programs aimed at supporting his development and well-being. His journey began with Family Bridges Reunification Program, which opened on June 23rd, successfully closed on February 13th. This is what the program does. Following the completion of the Family Reunification Program, Alex transitioned to 2 active cases, Future Ready Employment, which opened on 23rd, and Launchpad. You can see then it tells me several things about Alex's journey. What it also does is pull up his record ID, his case ID, so I can see he's successfully completed, as well as the different programs that he's involved in and the goals. I can also see, based on a very kind of silly rudimentary outcome scale, progress scale I developed, what his outcomes are per assessment for each of the outcomes, or what his outcome values are per outcome. Let's try another query just to see how this is doing. So let's ask who else is in family reunification. So now we're asking who else is in the program. I'm gonna just give it a couple seconds. So here it says Family Bridges Reunification Program, what it focuses on and serves multiple clients. You can set this to whatever you want. So I've asked the LLM to give this back to me in a particular way. If you want more or less detail, or you want those responses in a certain way, you can tune it to do so. So here what I can see is the program record, Family Bridges Reunification. I can see a complete list of all my clients that are in it, and then I can also see a list of services. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take Forest and ask for a case snapshot? So show me a case snapshot of Forest Robinson. I'm just asking really basic queries. Some of these queries you probably have accessible in your data, but what it does do is show you the art of the possible. So here we go, we'll scroll down. Forest is currently engaged in an active case, great, has multiple goals. Here it has outcomes. So here I can see that he has 1 case. If he had multiple, I'd be able to see it. Let's just do something slightly different before we go back to the presentation. Any clients with no contact in the last 10 days. So this is a totally different part of the graph that I'm looking at. 81, okay, my case managers are in shit. I have most of my clients haven't had contact within the last 10 days. Here I can see a list of my clients, last intake, last assessment, last exit. So we're gonna pick one. Let's pick Yale. So if I want to see all the contact Yale has had, show me Yale Collins timeline. So I've created a query, a tool in the background that says, when they ask about timeline, here's the relationships that you need to look at. So let's ask and see what it shows me. Great. So this tells me that Yale, what his situation is, what he's engaged in. I've created a fairly verbose LLM to bring this back to me, all his touch points. And importantly, what I can see here is all of his cases. I'm like, okay, was assessed here. Okay, exit, interesting. So now I'm curious, why hasn't anyone talked to Yale Collins? Who is Yale Collins' case manager? Okay, so now I can see he actually has 4 active cases, 1 completed. And we have Angela successfully completed, so Angela's off the hook. Andre, Michael, and David. So I look and I think, David's the last person who opened. What's going on with David? I know David to be a great case manager. Why might he have not contacted Yale in the last 10 days? So this is show me David Brown's caseload. So it's going to traverse the graph. It has rules in the background of what kind of relationships we want to look at. I see David currently manages caseload of 17. He's got a whole bunch of goals set, which is awesome. Means he's been doing assessments with the clients, but only 12 have been completed. Okay, I can look at the cases he has. Good job on Chris. and the number of active. So now I have, as a leader, as a clinical supervisor, some direction of where I need to go and how I might need to follow up with Dave. Gonna go back to our presentation. So the graph, I hope, shows, we can have more conversations about it, you actually don't need huge data sets. What I showed you, and I could have showed you 30 more, you don't need huge data sets, you just need connected ones to get those insights, and every relationship you have will enable hundreds of those queries. The graph structure, as it grows exponentially, so too are your ability to get insights, as long as you have a coherent kind of language structure. Some easy, like intermediate questions, between easy and intermediate questions you could ask or query as a nonprofit. Who's moving between programs most often? What happens before a crisis call? What service combinations lead to stable outcomes? Where are the disengagement drop-offs? Who are goals hardest to achieve for whom? At a municipal and provincial level, this exact same thing applies. A person's a person, a case is a case, program's a program, an org's an org. So how do people flow between shelter? What pathways lead to homelessness stability, from homelessness to stability? What agencies interact with the same individuals? Where are their service gaps? Provinces, how do people move across ministries? What interventions correlate to long-term stability? Where are we duplicating services? As long as we have the roughly the right nodes within what we're collecting at the front end, we can start to build those relationships and query. And I really think I've been so excited for the last 2 days in a really potentially game-changing way as in regards to social outcomes and data. I promised you frameworks. So the questions that I did, plus about 100 more, these are the entities you would need to collect in your organization. If you're on Google Sheets right now or Excel or nothing, that's okay, no judgment. These are the things you may consider working towards. So this is what you would need for who are we serving. This is what you need for what's happening. These are what results are emerging and for whom. And so we'll share this with you and happy to talk about that. If you're feeling like, cool, we should do that, where do we start? All good. What we would recommend is you start with one question. You identify, is it the front end that it's our problem? We're not collecting the right thing? Or is it the back end? We're not analyzing, we're not structuring, excuse me, the right thing. Identify the data elements you need. Start to think through what that ontology could look like, and we're here to help with that. Check for consistent meaning. Look at where this might land and start to play with these tools that are available. Neo4j, the AI integration is a slightly separate ballgame, but start to think about what a relational database could look for you and whether there's a role for that in your organization. And then just approve one layer at a time, making sure you have the right data model, making sure you're collecting the right thing, making sure you have an ontology. Then you can get to some of the fancier things. I would be remiss without saying how we can help. If you don't have a data collection system, Moretto was built upon all of these ontological principles that we just spoke about. So making sure you're collecting the right thing from the hopper. If you have a system, but your data is fragmented, you don't need a system, that's great. We can help you create a data model that would work within the confines of your system that will help ease this journey for you. If your data lives in spreadsheets, exports, or reports, and you want to work towards a graph, we can talk about that. If you want to bring AI into the workflow, we'll bring someone smarter than myself. But we can also do that about that natural language querying against relational graph databases. And then end to end, we really do it all. And that's kind of our experience within one of the provinces we're working now, but happy to have those conversations. Okay, I know we are just about at time. I'll quickly say this and we'll do questions. We really want to push this forward because it's the right thing to do. It really will unlock so many of the issues that all of us face in this room to make a measurable impact on social issues. So we're offering 15 45-minute consultations with Matt and I. If you just want to talk about some of these concepts and what it means in your organization, just have a conversation. We'll bring you the things we know. We'll tell you what we don't know. Spaces are limited and we'll kind of try to get these done in December, early January. So just email me if you'd like, and we can set up that conversation. Very casual, but just how you might start to go through this on your own. Thank you. I won't stop sharing in case anyone needs anything, but questions? Can't see anyone.
There is one in the Q&A. It says, how effective would this be if you're aiming for anonymity and confidentiality, therefore want to have de-identified data?
Yep. And so say that again, Travis, the first part.
Um, Anonymity, sorry, that's a hard word, and confidentiality. So we don't
Yep,
want to be feeding that personal data in there. Would be,
totally.
yeah.
Yep. So how you set up your graph database still has all the options that you would have ordinarily. So setting up a secure environment, role access, keeping certain personal data in certain parts of the graph that are not accessible. And so if you can do it with a relational database, you can do it with a graph database. So there'd be no issue with doing that kind of thing and controlling. For example, you don't want your executive director to be able to query person names. So you can set that up. So it's only accessing part of that data or part of that graph. And that's the beauty of it.
Other questions? Thank you, Joseph. Another one. Do you have any suggestions for small nonprofit organizations with limited proficiency with AI who want to begin building pathways?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I, again, social policy person first, am probably well versed to speak to that because I'm on my own journey of how to become self-proficient with and without my smart technology team that we have here. And so I would start with front end. What are we collecting? Where are we collecting it? What are the fields? How do we think those fields might ladder up to an insight? What questions do we really need to know? What do we really need to know to manage people's day-to-day journeys? I would also separately, I'm a big fan of going on ChatGPT and say, explain graph database like I'm five. Explain ontologies like I'm five. Like use some of those LLMs to really start to solidify the concepts in your own head. And then also to, of course, you'll need a technical expert, but then you'll be able to kind of come to that table with that technical expert and be really clear what you need for your organization. Because without that vision, I find these technological and data transformations aren't as successful. Also, please book a meeting with me. Like I would love to chat about it.
Thank you. What are some new ways for collecting data and that go beyond surveys and interviews, especially in culturally diverse communities? Good one.
Oh, that's so good.
I like that one.
Okay, so I'm going to go on a bit of a roundabout and let's see if I get back to it. The thing that I find promising and I like about Graph is that it allows you to take disparate data sources and build relationships between the concepts. And therefore, so things like census data, research that's previously been done. Basically, any body of data you can put into the graph and then indicate what those relationships are with the data and the queries you're trying to do. So I'll start there is what I think that allows us to do is we've generated so much data about so many people and so many groups of people everywhere. So how might we first use what we have available? In regards to collecting data that goes beyond surveys and interviews, that's so interesting. To me, it's where are the natural moments and interactions of people's journey, and where do we use tools to collect that information? I'm not sure if I have an additional kind of answer for you.
From a funder perspective, what are best practices for aligning data collection in reporting without overburdening frontline staff? Ooh.
Yes, I think over-reporting comes from three different things. One, a lack of consistent understanding of the ontology. Two, on a program side where there is specialism, we're like, well, we're a different program than everyone else. We can't possibly be collecting something the same as this program because we are different and special, which is true, but there's ways to build in that flexibility that allow for that. Third, on the funder side, is that same kind of conception. So on the funder, what I see is a lack of vision on what insight you actually want to know, and a lack of collaboration with the people you're funding on what types of information they have in the natural occurrence of their program that would help answer those questions. And so my dream is that we would see a better connection between fields, the smallest bit, and the insights. And to us, that's kind of what this pursuit of ontology is a common shared language for funders and for programs to use.
There's one about have we done projects with IRCC funded agencies, uploaded into iCare? I can take that one. And I guess I probably should introduce myself. I'm Travis Turner. I'm one of the co-founders here at HelpSeeker. I do lots of the partnership type meetings, so have these questions quite a bit. Anyways, no, currently not. Have we been down that path with upload into iCare, but I have scoped it out. I know what you're talking about, and 100% possible. So by all means, that would probably be a contact me and let's have the conversation. So my contact info wasn't there, but it's just travis@helpseeker.org. Good. Other questions? Oh, I think there's another one. Oh, and I just answered this in the discussion one, so I think we're good there. Others? Give folks another couple of seconds here. We did put aside 90 minutes for this one in case there was a bunch of questions, but typically we do only 60 minutes here. So, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Tosh. I see Tosh just dropped. That one would connect you directly with me. But again, through myself or just reach out to Jesse and we can always find something. Spot to meet. So there's Jesse's contact info. And we'll be sending this out, like I said, hopefully by end of day. That's the goal, but pending. Jesse, I think we're good. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, thanks. It was a pleasure. Hope to chat to you guys more about it soon. And yeah, take care.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.